Hey everyone, looks like we are live. We made it to yet another Wednesday. I'm so glad you're here. Here we go, working on the Photonic portrait and just continuation from last week. So I'm excited about this painting, about how we're working with light and working with photons, and we are painting a woman in candlelight, but we are painting the frequency and the light waves, and I'm excited to share that with you tonight. So let's say who we have here today. Mr. Roy, Color Graphics, all the way from New Jersey. How are you? We have Patty all the way from Illinois. Great to see you. We have Kyle all the way from Pennsylvania. How are you, sir? This is great. Great to see everybody so far. And let's see. So right now we are getting pretty far. I'm going to touch on some of the uses of which you will like. Some great uses of, how do I say, using transparent glazes. That would be really great, you know. So that is important. And we have Rick Lotta. How's it going? Great to see you, Rick from Canada. And we have Colette all the way from the Atlanta area. So that is fantastic. So we have a great group here already. I have my palette all set up. I got some paintbrushes. I got to get some paper towels. And we are ready to go. Move this out of the way here. So I'm excited about this evening, working with you guys and talking and hearing how everybody is doing, talk about art, technique, all that fun stuff. So I'm excited, and I'm excited to see you. Yes, Kyle, all around the globe. It's so true. I love that. You know, everyone who comes to see me is from different areas of the world. I love that. I think that's really amazing. And I'm going to get my reference up here. Let's see. Got this. Great, that's set up. And now I'm going to get one more thing set up here. How's the sound and picture, everybody? Pretty good? Thank you so much. I appreciate that. One of the things I'm going to touch on is how we can darken an area and not necessarily have to repaint it, because you already put the detail in. So what I'm going to do is actually, I sound angelic. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. And I'm going to get my brushes out here, the ones I've been using all day. I tend to want to use the brushes that I've been using today, as opposed to going into something totally new. So here are my brushes right over here. So the first thing is this area right here underneath our hair. It's a very rich red, right? So what I want to do is actually darken that, and that has to do with Photonic Realism. When light reaches the end, or photons reach the end of its energy as far as in the visible spectrum, it's going to go to red, to a dark red, to black. And that's what we're doing here. So we have to get that dark red to black right over here. And that has to do with Photonic Realism. And so what I'm going to do is get a good sized brush. I think this one's pretty good. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my palette knife for this. I like mixing with the palette knife. It's much better. If you're mixing with the paintbrush, you get your paintbrush kind of dirty. So let's see here. So the black I'm using is a Perylene Maroon, which is a great color. That's the dark red. And the black I'm going to use is a transparent black. So you want to mix transparents with transparents when you are mixing something to go on transparent. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's true. And in paints, transparent and opaque are good for different things. And so remember that. That's very important. Oh, thank you. Colette says she looks beautiful. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'm going to use some solvent-free gel and some of this red and black and see what this looks like. So right now, I'm going to apply this here. And what it's going to do, it's going to leave like a veneer that you can see underneath. And that's what Photonic Realism is about, is painting the wavelength progression from the yellow to the yellow-orange, to the orange, to the red-orange, to the red, to the maroon, to the black. And that's what we're doing here. And so I'm really paying attention to how we're applying this so we don't lose the information that we have underneath, all the stuff that we painted before. And how is this important for airbrush artists? Well, let's say you're painting and you want to make it darker than you have. You don't have to go and repaint it. You can just do a transparent glaze. And glazes have been going on since the Renaissance, so it is definitely nothing new. But this could help oil painters, it could help airbrush artists. It's not, you know, just relegated to oil painters. It could help acrylic painters, watercolor painters. And in here as well, there's a really beautiful rich dark in here. So you see how I'm using the transparent colors? And I'm increasing that glaze effect. And what I'm doing is I'm actually adding some of this solvent-free gel, which is basically a colorless paint. And so it makes it even more transparent. I'm going to add this beautiful dark glaze over here. And you see I don't lose all the hard work that I did with the paintbrush earlier. And you can always take a paper towel and wipe it if there's an area where you went too far. And it's really beautiful because you can just shift that color and it's like you just put a transparent color right over it. Like a transparent film, like a mylar almost. Now right here, it's more red-orange here, and I'm going to put a glaze here. So I'm going to get a different brush. Something like this. And I'm going to take a transparent red-orange. Now, it's important that you use a transparent paint, right? You can't do this with an opaque paint. So it's important that you know what colors are transparent and what colors are opaque. I think in the airbrush world, not enough attention is paid to that, and that hurts the artist. See, I did something wrong there. I actually, I made the red with the transparent, and then I shifted it orange with a opaque, and that was wrong. So what I'm going to do is try and shift this with a transparent yellow, and let me go get that. Remember, transparent plus transparent equals transparent. Transparent plus opaque equals semi-opaque. So you don't want it to be a semi-opaque. So I'm going to put some of this Michael Harding Bright Yellow Lake here. Put this aside. And now I can mix a transparent with a transparent to get that orange. Remember, transparent plus transparent equals transparent. Simple algebra. I'm going to look at that color and explore it. I may need a little more of this Yellow Lake by Michael Harding. It is very orange, but if it's transparent then it's okay. It's just going to put a light veneer over this. We put a little bit of that solvent-free gel. And let's see if we could raise the energy here. And I think we are. I think we are raising the energy. See how we are doing that? And we're not covering, we're just putting a see-through veil of color. And what this is doing, it's honoring the photons as it gets stronger towards the light and gets weaker away from the light. I'm sure a lot of you have never seen the use of transparency in this way, but it's important that I share it with you all. Because there's a reason why certain paint tubes and certain paints are transparent and opaque. And they're not there just because that's the nature of it. Otherwise, a paint company has no reason to make a transparent or opaque if there isn't a technical reason for it. Paint companies will not do extra work if they don't have to. But as artists, if we know that we need to have transparents and opaques for different things, then the paint companies will respond. Now look at all the energy that I infused in her face already. Because that's what I'm painting. I'm painting energy. The energy from the photons of this candle are going there. So I have to make sure that I put that in. Now I may come in with an opaque here where the light is hitting it. That would probably be maybe a good idea. And that's what you want to do. You want to continue working from opaque to transparent. The light is coming from this candle, so I'm going to take this red orange and really infuse energy because the light's coming from below. and it's going to hit this area underneath her eyelid there. Underneath her eyebrow, I should say. Like stained glass, you know, that's how it works, is that you infuse these beautiful colors and put the energy in. Down here, notice that I can go into the dark and not have any effects. See that? Because what you need something lighter underneath for the glaze to actually resonate. You don't glaze a lighter color over a darker. You don't usually. You may glaze sometimes you may glaze a darker color over a lighter color, but that would be just to kind of enhance that dark a little bit, but it's really not a glaze. Hey Gary, great to see you. How are you, sir? All the way from the Hershey, Pennsylvania area. Great to see you, sir. And now I'm going to come back in with that really beautiful dark red glaze here. So I want to actually wipe this clean, and then I'm going to come in with some straight maroon, perylene maroon, to really go into from that black red to maroon to just maroon, and kind of shift this. And remember that energy doesn't dissipate right away. And I always give the analogy to a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. It doesn't go to room temperature right away. I'm going to lightly glaze this so there's a nice transition. Notice all that energy we're infusing in her forehead. And it's a transparent, so it can't be, you can't make a transparent painting. You can't make transparent paint opaque. Just like you can't make opaque paint transparent. You can give it certain attributes of it, but it'll never be that. And Gary says, another great painting, Tim, with some finishing touches and detail. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that so much. And now we have this maroon perylene, and we can see how this is really making those photons sing from the energy coming from the flame of the candle. And I want that to be smooth, so I'm going to take one of these sable brushes and I'll smooth this out. And now I'm getting that energy dissipation. It's slow, just like your tea doesn't go to room temperature right away. So whenever you see where it's broken up, you have the light and then the dark like right away, that's usually an error. Misreading of the photons. And here I'm going to infuse some of this transparent color. And the transparents are great because what it's doing, it's going over the details that you work so hard to put on. And then we can smooth this out just a little bit. And you'll see that the lights, right? You'll say, hey, those lights, we can always go opaque with the lights later. Okay, so now we want to bring in some of this light color coming down here, this orange. So we'll go back to our other brush and we'll infuse that orange and, no, the red and yellow mixture, yes. And those are transparents, guys, you know. And maybe I want a little bit more yellow. And I'm going to actually go ahead and glaze this yellow here. And that might be too yellow, so I'll go back to the yellow and red to make this orange. And then here we have this beautiful yellow orange color. And we're not getting, so we're not losing all the hard work that we did. Now later, if I want to lighten this, I can take a transparent white and kind of smooth everything out if that's what I'd like to do. And just bring some of this orange down here. And that's a great thing by working this way. I can do transparent glazes, go back over it with opaques, and keep doing that until I get it just where I want it to be. Now here we have a beautiful red, almost like a pure red. So I'm going to take some of this bright red by Winsor & Newton, and it's also a maroon perylene, which is, no, pyro red, which is the same color that the Ferrari uses for their red. And what I'm doing is just honoring that wavelength progression here. So I have it more orange, but I think it's a little more red here. Especially here on her lips. We'll take more of this pyro red. And notice that I'm not painting anything covering. It's all very, very light. Hey Brad, how's it going? Great to see you. Now I'm going to take that original color, which was the maroon perylene, and the black that we were playing with earlier. I think I can kind of extend this dark underneath her chin here. I'm just playing with transparency. And you airbrush artists, you should be looking at this and think, how can you apply this technology, this way of painting, to your airbrush painting? That's what, would really help you. So I'm going to get more of my transparent black. Some transparent black, some transparent maroon perylene, and so that's a dark that has all that energy in it, but it's not covering. It's just kissing the surface and revealing what's underneath. See how I can darken that lip without changing it. And you can see the lip going away from that candle is much less energy, because it's not getting the energy from that candle because it's not facing it directly. So it's getting residual energy. However, this side is getting more direct energy. So I have to paint it differently. I have to think of it differently. So you don't really look for a likeness when you're painting. You just look to figure out how is the light resonating with your model, whether it be a car, a beautiful woman. She will reveal herself, right? So you don't have to worry about that. Just worry about understanding what you're painting. And then I'm going to come in with the straight red. And then we're going to work in transparent, and you're going to see how different that is. I mean, in opaques. And then I can infuse some red here because not as much energy is hitting that. And the great thing about transparent, you can just wipe them away. So you don't get the candle, you don't get candlelight by trying to paint the candlelight. You get the candlelight by painting how it interacts with whatever it is you're painting. What's the reaction of skin? What's the reaction of cloth, right? Those are things. So you're really not painting her or the candle, you're painting the interaction between the two. Now I do see that we have some red energy right here. We're going to put the red energy. So remember, the energy as it goes towards the light will go from red to orange to yellow. And then of course, as light goes down, it goes the opposite direction as well. It goes from yellow to yellow-orange to red-orange to red to maroon to black. And we'll just glaze this. And then we can take something as simple as a little baby fan brush and kind of even this out. But then we want to go ahead and maybe go a little bit of that red orange here. But make sure we're not using an opaque, because I almost did that. And that will ruin what you're trying to do. So I'm going to take my Michael Harding Yellow Lake, and then I'm going to use the Windsor Red, which is Pyrrole Red. And I'm going to mix them up. Remember, transparent plus transparent equals transparent. And you see how we went from that dark red to that light red to this orange here. And I can always come in with opaques and infuse some energy into there, some intensity, I should say, not energy. Intensity means more of the light, right? If it's more of that light, if the same light is facing, if the same light is closer to you, you're going to be blinded. But that same light that's further away, it's not changing the nature of the light, it's just the intensity of the light, right? How much of it is there. And that's what we have to watch out when we're painting as well. Liz, how are you? Great to see you. How's everything? And Mr. Gary says, can you explain about your post earlier about people complaining about the complexity? Yes, definitely. Great question. So, and thank you for asking that, Gary. So, over the past, I would say 18 months, I started studying quantum mechanics, and it had nothing to do with light. And as I was studying quantum mechanics, it really started to go into the nature of light on a quantum level. You know, small, like what's happening, what's causing light to do what it is. It's not just something that we are watching. You know, it's not something that we just, okay, there it is, I see blue, I paint blue. I see red, I paint red, but actually goes into the nature of it. And as I got deeper and deeper into it, it just one thing kind of led into another. And then a lot of different things happened, and I started learning about subsurface scattering and wavelength progression, also the dissipation. I mean, it really keeps going, right? And a lot of times in my live streams, when I started talking about it, a lot of people started kind of saying, well, I just want to paint. I don't want to know about, you know, the nature of light and on a quantum level and everything like that. I think when I started doing things that were not expected of me, or things that kind of made what was already, you know, for centuries, this is how it is, to look at it differently, I think it did cause a rift with some people, and that's okay. And but I think it's always important, Gary, to look at life differently and ask yourself, and ask myself and ourselves, you know, is there a different way to look at this? For me, I always wanted to know the why, right? I always wanted to know, what is causing her skin going from yellow to yellow orange to yellow orange, going that progression from left to right on the visible spectrum. What's causing that? And, what is that? And also, I started learning about other things, such as the image as the light source. The light source isn't the candle. She's the light source, because when we're looking at her, the candle's not part of it. And what if the candle's off the screen? Then the only light that our eyes are seeing is her. So all those different things and believe me, I went to 8 years of classically trained art school, and it is looking at things differently. So I am getting a lot of kickback, but that's okay. I know I'm on the right track if that's happening. And everything that I am bringing to the table is scientifically backed. And that's what really excites me, I think, is the fact that, it's not my opinion. This is not like a new style. This is basically going into the physics of light, and not classical physics, but quantum physics, which is really, really exciting. And like any science, the more you look into it, the deeper the truths are. And as I'm getting deeper and deeper, I know I'm going to, debunk a lot of myths about what painting is. And that's okay, because a lot of the ways that I used to paint have been debunked, and that makes people uncomfortable, and that's okay. I understand it, but I never came into this world to make people comfortable. I came in this world to find truth. So to me, this is my truth, not just my way of seeing, but my way of kind of revealing a new way of seeing. The light source on this is interesting. You have a light from the candles and a light on her back. Yes, and that's why I picked this image, because we're seeing the nature of light's interaction. On this side, we're seeing a candlelight interaction. And on this side, we're seeing the interaction from a far window. And how those two kind of meet is really, one of the things I wanted to explore. How light reacts to a tiny light source, such as a candle, and how light reacts, how she reacts to a small light source that's close to her, such as a candle, and how light reacts to her with a large light source further away. So there's a lot of things going back and forth, which I think is interesting, and I think Photonic Realism forces us to look at life differently, look at the world differently. And like anything else, I think looking at something in that way, you almost can't go back, right? And so as you notice, with Photonic Realism, I'm painting energy, I'm not painting light. And that's something totally new and different. So right now I'm adding this kind of Davies gray, which is a transparent gray. And what I'm doing is I'm not getting rid of the light, I'm just lowering the volume of the light here, which is interesting, right? So the whole, and I know you guys hear this all the time, it's all about light and shade, right? This binary, here's light and here's shade. But it's really not like that. What's really happening is a basic and ebb and flow of energy. Because the only place where, as far as our painting is concerned, where there's no energy is in the fact where it's totally black. And even there, there's still energy there. So for me to paint this shadow, which is underneath her nose, it's not an absence of light, but it's a dimming of the light. So the light is still there, but the energy is lower. And that's what I'm painting, is that light going from, the light's everywhere on her. She's a light source, right? So if we kind of forget about the candle and forget about the window, she's the only light we're seeing. And there's different degrees of energy that is reflecting into our retina. And it's looking at the world with what's really hidden, what's unseen, which is what quantum mechanics is about. You know, what's happening underneath the surface. And to me, I find that totally exciting, because I did study with the greatest artists on the planet, and I did get an art education that was not lacking in any way. But I always felt that I wanted to know the more, and although my teachers were amazing and I have such great reverence for them, they could never tell me the why. And with Photonic Realism, if anyone wants to know the why, this is the answer that they were looking for. And this is the answer what I'm looking for, is the why. And the great thing is not everyone has to come on board, right? This is my expedition into the quantum truth of light and dark. And it's just, you know, if someone wants to continue painting like that, that's the art establishment, and that's cool. I have nothing against it. But I know that if they learn this stuff, they can't unlearn it. And that's the thing about truth, right? No matter what's going on, you can't debunk the truth. You can reject it, but you can't debunk it. And that's why Photonic Realism is based on scientific truth. But it also kind of shakes people up, because, you know, this is not what everyone is telling me. Ever since the Renaissance, nobody has ever gone into quantum mechanics and what exactly is happening with the photons and wave packets and all of these different things. The duality of light. Light is a particle and a wave at the same time, and it acts like both of them, which is interesting. So whenever we're looking at things, one thing you got to realize is that the only thing we're seeing is what's coming in our eyes directly. Not from the sides, not up and down, directly, right? So those photons, which are her, right? That's going right into your eye from the computer screen. That's going right into your eye. However, if someone is in front of you and to the left, and they're looking at something to your right, they're seeing those photons. It's going from whatever they're looking at, those photons are going right in their retinas, right? And it's a direct path. It has to almost be parallel. But those photons are whizzing by you. The light from whatever that person is watching is whizzing by you. And what's amazing is that they're invisible to you, but they're visible to the person that's to your left and in front of you. Even though that image is whizzing by you like a projector, it's invisible to you. And that's the whole thing about light, is that light needs an observer. And unless you're observing it straight on, that light doesn't exist for you. So to me, that's like the super exciting stuff about the Photonic Realism, is that it goes into the actual nature of light. And to me, that's like ridiculously exciting. The actual nature of what light is doing and how it acts. And it's really deep. And here I'm infusing some energy on the bridge of her nose. And you see how I actually added the glaze of the red. And look how beautiful that infused energy onto her face. Now that's not intensity. Intensity is different. That's the amount of light. The energy is the frequency or the wavelength. Kyle says, I love light, especially in the form of a saber. It's so interesting how the lightsaber, right? And how, okay, so here's something cool talking about Star Wars and the nature of light, right? So a photon, as it comes from the sun, is invisible. It doesn't have any mass, and it travels at the speed of light. It's the only thing that can travel at the speed of light is a photon, because it has no mass, it has no weight. So, and it's invisible. A photon is invisible until it hits something, until it reacts to matter or a particle or something. It has to react to something. If it doesn't react to anything, such as air particles, moisture, dust, it will be invisible. So when they have, you know, the lasers in space in Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica, that's impossible. Since it's a vacuum, that particular laser will not be, since it isn't reacting to anything, before it hits that spaceship, there would be no reaction. So it would be invisible until it hit that other spaceship and blew it up. Because a photon needs something. Light needs something to interact with to be visible. So that's interesting. And so as far as a lightsaber is concerned, that's interesting. But as far as like space, so here's something else to think about. So when you look at, you know, pictures of the moon and you look at the sky or the space around it, why is the space around it black, right? Or, you know, why is space black? It's getting the same sun that we're getting. Why isn't it lighting up the sky? Why is it not lighting up the space? It's not lighting up space because space has no, it's a vacuum, right? There's nothing there. So that's why there's nothing there and space is still black. However, what happens to Earth, right? Why do we get the light? Because of all the water and dust and all the particles that are in the atmosphere. The light hits it and the the highest frequency or the smallest wavelengths, which are the purple, the violet, and the blue, it starts bouncing off of those little particles first, and that's what gives us the blue sky. That's why our planet, when we look at the sky, it's blue, because of the fact is that photons are hitting matter, which are the little air particles, dust, moisture, that sort of thing. So when you start learning about light, you start knowing more and more about it, and it gets more and more fascinating. And it's almost like you don't want to stop. You want to keep going deeper and deeper in it. To me, that's super exciting. And I love that, you know. So a lot of people are like, you know, who do I think I am that I'm just going to say I'm no longer painting the model. I'm painting the light as it interacts with matter, and the matter in this case being the model. So I'm flipping the script. So whenever you do that, you're not going to have a lot of comfortable people around you. But that's okay, because I'm only after the truth. I'm not after making people comfortable. If the truth is making people uncomfortable, then that's what I'm going to do. Mr. Dave, thank you so much for the super chat, my friend. I appreciate that. How are you, sir? Thank you so much for hanging out, and I appreciate that so much. And I hope everything's going great for you and the family. And it's always great to see you. Thank you so much for the support. I really appreciate that, sir. Thank you. And so now I'm going to come back in with this transparent Davies gray. And remember, the transparent is I'm not getting rid of what's underneath. I'm just kind of painting a light glaze, or like a light film over that. And so this right here is her depressor anguli oris, and bringing that down. Oh, so your mom said that you that she talked to me about what, sir? So I so it depends on what your mom said that I talked to her about. I don't spill the beans unless I knew that the beans have been spilled. Oh man, exactly. Oh man, that is so amazing. Definitely. We'll talk one-on-one, my friend. We definitely will. But everything is just super well deserved. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. That's for sure. Oh, look, Dave's here, and now we can see the invisible light spectrum. So you see how using this transparent gray, almost, it's not really a gray, it's more like a raw umber, but it has a little less green into it. And you see how I can just kind of lightly bring in some of these little indentations that are in her skin as the muscles turn under. See how it's so great that you don't have to repaint it? You can just use little tiny transparent, oh man, I am like super excited. It's so incredible. Same thing underneath her nose. I'm taking some of this Davies gray. And would this work in airbrush? Yes, I think it does. I don't think you have the wet into wet, which is really what's going to help you here, but you can kind of, you know, darken an area without changing everything, without losing all of the beautiful detail that you put underneath. Same thing here. And let's say it does get a little too gray, I can always enhance this with, once it's dry, with some of that maroon perylene. So here is her depressor Angulite Oris. Oh man, it is a good thing, you know. And a year or two, that happens like really fast, you know. The older I get, a year or two is just like a blur. Oh, that's fantastic, though. And so you see how we're lowering that. We're lowering the energy. We're not lowering the intensity. So we're creating some longer wavelengths here with lower frequency. So if an artist was to, let's say, adopt Photonic Realism, right? What would be some of the things that they would have to know? And that's a good question, you know. It's like, okay, what do I need to know about this stuff? You know, do I need to know equations and stuff like that? No, you don't need to know that. But there are some things that you need to know. You know, what is the progression from the highest wavelengths to the longer wavelengths to the shortest wavelengths, or the higher frequency to the low frequency, right? And what are the progression of them? And those are the things you would have to know. And then it would also help to know the nanometers, right? You know, what are the measurements of, let's say, orange as opposed to green? And knowing that will really help you understand what the light is doing. So what's really interesting here is I see a hair. Now I'm working on paper. Would it be detrimental to remove that hair? Let's see if I can do it. I think I can. Let's see. I don't want to hurt the paper, but I think I got the hair. Okay, so I extracted the hair. So I'm just gonna leave that there. You know, but at least I got the hair out of there. And now I can come in and do some opaques on here. I'm taking this gray Davies gray here and working on some glazes here. Now notice that it's not going to cover. It's just going to kind of shift that color and the detail underneath. That's basically what it's doing. Now when you're doing glazes, you have to say that's all I'm going to do for that time period, right? You're not going to continue working on glazes. Now that has to dry before I do anything else, right? That's very important. But as we can see, right, we are getting to a certain finish here, which is very interesting. We're sensing the light, we're feeling the energy that's on her. But let's change it a little bit. Let's start working on some energy that we can actually put in, right? When I say not energy but intensity, right? Where more light is actually hitting. So I'm going to come here, right here, and see if I could take this up a notch, as Emerald would say. Emerald or Emerald? Yes. And we're going to push it up a notch. Let's see. So now we're going to be working in some opaque colors. And we're going to hit some intensity. Now that's a little crazy intense, so you definitely have to work your way up to this. Now that's too much, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my color mixing program. And we're just going to see just how intense that is. Now I may see it as intense, but that could be simultaneous contrast, you know? So, wow, that is like not even close to what I was thinking. See, always make sure you have a system for mixing colors, and a system that is not obtuse. Obtuse? Yeah, obtuse. One that's simple and helps your workflow. Okay, so I think I see how I'm going to get there. And what I thought before was super not very bright is actually this lightest color here. Let's see what we have here, guys. Now, I don't see that's too bright right there, right? So rather than go ahead and paint over it and make a mess, I'm definitely going to get rid of it. So we want to get rid of that as opposed to try and paint with it, and it's just going to make everything too light. So we want to make sure that we don't let it go overboard. So now I have this number 2 bright brush. And we do have an intensity as this zygomatic bone is facing the light most directly. Here we go. And we'll leave it like that for now. And let's see if we can have that same idea of more intensity here. Now, why is it intensity? Does it have anything to do with the actual wavelengths? No, it has to do with the amount of light is actually hitting it, right? So intensity is different than energy. And now this is creating more balance, right? So we're looking, you know, where is the most intensity? And the most intensity is usually going to be your most light-facing areas. So right here we have a similar light intensity here. And that's happening why? Because of the angle and proximity of the light coming from that window. And yes, everyone knows I'm a big anatomy guy and everything like that. And that helps you, right? But remember, it's not your main character in this play that you're reproducing is the light. And then comes the object that light is reacting to. And then thirdly is you, the observer. So here's a good question to throw at you guys, and I know you heard this ever since you're a kid. If a tree falls in the forest, right, does it make a noise? And I want to hear what you all say. So if a tree falls in the forest but no one's there, does it make a noise? And I'd love to hear what people are saying. And even if you are watching this in record, go ahead and leave a message in the comments. So one of the things that I basically will say about light, if there's no one to observe it, then the photons are still there, but no one's there to actually collapse the waves to actually give it color, which is interesting. Does a bear blank in the woods? I always thought they went to 7-Eleven, but that's funny. Of course he does, right? I mean, where else is he gonna go? That's funny, Kyle. Then there's this little bit right on the wing of the nostril, just above the wing of the nostril, is this beautiful light. I don't want to touch where I glazed, right? Because that's still wet, it's light, and anything that I put over that will basically ruin the glaze. You have to let that kind of sit and dry. And that will dry pretty quickly, but still you don't want to keep going over glazes. Let the glaze kind of set and then go from there. So right here we have this light here, and also while we're here, let's look at the ear. And I can see we can infuse a light here, which eventually we're going to come in and glaze. So I'm setting up for the glaze here. Just like a stained glass window, you know, for those glass to work, we need to have a sunny day. Otherwise, a stained glass window doesn't have the same effect. Now right here, we have a lot less intensity here, right? Because it's facing the light here, and then it's kind of turning away obliquely. So there has to be a turning down, a dimming switch of the intensity of the light here. So let's see if we could actually nail that color. That would be really good, the value, right? We see if we can nail that together. So yes to the sound and the bear, yes. But, and that's a great great thing, Mr. Gregory, right? And that's a good question, right? And up for debate. So, do the waves, just like light waves, there are sound waves. But if there's no one or nothing to actually resonate or actually turn those waves into sound, like us with an ear, does it make a sound, or is it just one of the many waves out there, like, like light waves and sound waves and, UV waves and ultraviolet waves? Is it the receptor or the observer that makes it a sound? And then the same question can be posed about light, right? If light is just a frequency of waves, a disturbance in the vacuum, so to speak, or in the air, then if there's no receptors, there's no rods and cones and receptors as far as our retina, is there anything that's going to make her skin orange? It would just be a wave. So not to saying that, yes, it does make a sound or doesn't make a sound, but it's a good debate on whether or not it needs the observer to turn those sound waves into the crackling of the wood, right? Otherwise, it's just vibrations. And the same thing, if there isn't humans to see these colors, then is it making colors? And those are the things that, in quantum mechanics, it's called the observer effect, that they are just waves. It is just a wave form. It's just, these different frequencies kind of vibrating in the air. And there's no difference between a sound wave and a light wave in the visible spectrum, but it's only when the receptors, the observer, does the photons kind of in wave function actually collapse into color. So that's what people like Einstein and Niels Bohr and Richard Feynman, and it's interesting. My heroes have always been artists, and they still are artists. But now my heroes are starting to become, astrophysicists and quantum mechanics physicists and all that. And it's really interesting. And Mr. Dave says, is that why blue light makes a higher pitch sound than red light? Interesting. So what's really interesting, and I'm not sure if light actually makes a sound wave, but if it does, it makes sense, because blue is a higher frequency, so it would have more energy. And so with a higher energy, like like a high voice, like, hi, my name's Bob, and then you have a low voice like, hello, and that's exactly what's happening with blue and red. Red is a lower frequency, so it is naturally deeper and has less energy, not intensity, but less energy. And the same thing with blue. It has high energy. It doesn't have to do with intensity, but high energy and a higher frequency. So that makes he likes the Bob voice. That is funny. Yeah, so it does make sense, because light waves and sound waves are all waves. So, and if you interpret a blue wave, it's going to be higher frequency than red if it's interpreted in sound. And that's the whole thing that is really exciting about it. And this is actually being interpreted into light as I'm seeing it. And like anything else, it gets deeper and deeper the more you study it. And what's really interesting, that most of the biggest breakthroughs in quantum mechanics happened like in the 1920s, 1930s and 40s. And, all the stuff that, they're starting to look into even more, it all happened back then. So you think about all the artists back in the day, the Impressionists, Rembrandt, Michelangelo, they had no idea about light waves and how it reacts, and photons are invisible until we observe it. To me, I think we're on something when it comes to painting, which we have an advantage over the old masters. And to me, that's super exciting. It really is. Even down to, I can go really deep into this, and, I don't want to go too deep into it, but it's just, every day it seems like I learned something new, and how I could apply that to my own painting and my own observation. So what I want to do is I want to paint this part of her orbicularis oris. It's not as light as that, so I have to turn turn the volume down a bit. Mr. Dave says, if sound didn't exist, we wouldn't have developed the ability to hear it, like light. Yeah, exactly. I think, and exactly. So here's another interesting thing. Sound waves are everywhere, right? Like radio waves, right? Radio waves are different frequencies. And so it's not until we tune in and get a resonance of that frequency with the dial can we hear that frequency from the radio station to our radio. It's really fascinating. And so for that sound to come out of that radio, it's almost like we have to receive the waves, right? And for that color to come in, come into our eyes, we have to receive those light waves, and we have to be on the right frequency. And you say, well, how frequency is not the same with light? Yes, it is, because the visible spectrum, I think, is between 380 nanometers to 700 nanometers or around there. Anything under or above, we can't see it. So for us to see it, it has to be within that frequency that we can actually see, which is really amazing. But definitely, so now we have all these different equipments and stuff where we can receive and kind of see and hear frequencies that normally humans can't. And that's exciting, right? So it is an exciting time. Not just what's going on with AI, which is really amazing, but there's so much more going on, with optics and sound, which is really great as well. But it's all tied into Photonic Realism, because Photonic Realism is all about, which is really fun, Photonic Realism is all about, frequencies and wavelengths and stuff like that, and kind of learning how to get a resonance. So a resonance is like my favorite word lately. And what I love about the word resonance is that it's when you're on the same frequency, that you can receive that frequency. So when someone is really good with color and they could see that color, it's because they are on the same frequency. They read the frequency of the color of a orbicularis oris. Hey, how you doing? Another person online. Great to see you. How are you? How's everything going? So again, I'm going to try and get this color. And it's funny because when I see the color, my mind is not believing it, because I'm not quite on the same frequency of that color. I'm not seeing the color for what it is. And so now what I have to do is I have to decipher it. And I can't always do it with my eyes, so I would need something like my Gideon color theory method. Never better. Oh, that's great. And Dave says in an interview, Michael Franti talked about his music physically interacting with the audience through the waves and vibrations. That's amazing. Yes. And that's exactly it. So imagine if those waves, those sound waves were not resonating with the audience, right? They weren't experiencing it. You know, they weren't into it. They weren't down with it. All the other kind of axioms that, you know, that people will use. But they weren't in that same frequency, then you're right. As Michael Franti said, they wouldn't be physically interacting through waves and vibrations. So it's really amazing. And the same thing with Photonic Realism is that we're actually pushing ourselves to be on the same wavelength. It's pretty exciting. And now I'm going to try and mix this color. So this isn't just a regular orange. This is more of a reddish orange. And I'm going to add that a little bit to this gray and see if I can get it. Again, my mind is telling me one thing, but because my mind isn't in the same frequency, so what I have to do is get more analytical and kind of make my mind get on that same wavelength. And it's really fascinating because when I really concentrate on what the Gideon method shows, then it's forcing me to get that wavelength. And let's see. Now I may put it down there and it may look really too dark, and that's okay, and then you decide. And he always tried to have a positive impact on the audience. Yes, exactly, and he's actually understanding that. And I think he's actually onto that kind of wavelength, you know, creating the proper wave field. And the wave field is everything. And Gary says it's like standing in a swimming pool versus the ocean. You feel the waves. Yes, that's the same exact thing. It's the waves, right? In the pool there are no waves, so there's really no resonance to happen. But you're far more emotional at the ocean because of the waves and how that's interacting with you, and how, you know, being on that ocean, you're almost having a resonance, right? You are reacting to that wave and being on the same wavelength. And Gary says there is no pee in the ocean, but there is in the pool. That depends on what pool, Dave. Don't go to public pools. Stay away from them. So now I'm kind of nervous to put down this dark here. But I'm being told through the wavelengths that this is actually the right color. Let's see. So here I'm going against my brain, and I'm trying to get resonance with what's in the image that I'm seeing. And like I said, it's so hard to do that, everybody, because our minds, they fight the resonance, don't they? Because we want to see the world the way we see it. So I initially look at this color around the orbicularis oris as too dark. But once I believe it and get into the same wavelength as what's there, get a resonance of the wavelength, then I start accepting it. and then I become in resonance with it. It's so salty because they pee all day. So fish don't pee. I know they poop because I used to have pet fish. So notice how I was afraid to come in with this dark because my mind was telling me that this dark around the orbicularis oris was too dark. But with the Gideon method, I was forced to see the wavelength as it is. So here is a perfect example why I feel this is an important method, because it helps us to see things as they are, as opposed to how our minds think they are. And I think that's the fight, right? I think that's the fight that I get when, and when my book comes out, I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of kickback. But the thing is, you can't kick back science to a certain extent, right? If it's scientifically proven, if it's following all the precepts of quantum mechanics and, photonics and all of that, it's hard to debunk. But that's the great thing about it. You don't have to. But the thing is, what it might get people upset is that you can't dispute it, right? You just can't. And I think that's what upsets people. And that's okay. And you see how all of a sudden this comes in harmony with what was there, with what's around it. And before, it just wasn't resonating with the rest of the painting. And a lot of times, you have to kind of get rid of something that you like to paint it correctly or to see it correctly. You have to, and I think right here with the orbicularis oris is very much like that. I liked the way it was painted. It was nice and light before, but it was out of harmony. I wasn't seeing it for what it was. Even though I liked it, I wasn't after what I like. I was after the truth. And so that's the bending of the spoon, isn't it? And that's hey, I don't like redefining things either, but I know if I want to paint with truth, I'm going to have to bend. And like that part in the Matrix, if you want to bend the spoon, you realize that it's not the spoon that bends, but us. And then we realize that there is no spoon, and the same thing when we are looking and what my eye sees and wants to see is light around here. But when my mind bends and believes in an analytical scientific way, then all of a sudden I'm the one who bends. And then what happens is that the painting becomes more real. So that was like the whole idea of seeing things for what they are as opposed to what I want it to be or what we have symbols. Because I was totally happy with that light color there because that's what I was seeing, but I wasn't resonating with the waveform. Gary says he knows the spoon never bent when my mom was hitting Yeah, that did hurt, right? You know? That spoon didn't give, we gave. Right, sir? Oh, another person online's working on a painting. Could you tell us about it? I'd love to hear. Tell us about the painting. Sort of an outdoor scene. Oh, wonderful. Like a landscape? Is it a place that is important to you? You know, like a backyard or a childhood memory? Or is it, you know, like a seascape? I'd love to hear more. And thank you for sharing that with us. Now here we have a little shift. So it's the same color, but it looks like it's a little shift towards a higher frequency. So it's going to yellow a little bit here. The energy level is going to yellow, but it is going to start getting more intense as it moves up towards the bright light at the mandible. Remember, energy and intensity are different. Energy is the frequency of the visible light spectrum, and then and intensity is, you know, how much of that light is actually interacting with the form. How close it is, what angle, that sort of thing. Oh, another person online says, it got two main characters from the Mexican Revolution. My cousin is a history buff, so I'm making it for him. That sounds really amazing. I love that. Oh, that's great. And is it sort of like Francisco Goya's painting? I think it was the revolutionary painting that was interesting. And hey, Art by Ty, great to see you. How are you? So glad you're here. So these two generals are conversing and just standing there enjoying the day. Oh, interesting. Mr. Gary says he has to run. Take care, my friend Gary. Thanks for hanging out with me and us. We appreciate it. And I hope to see you next week. Have a great weekend. Don't work too hard. And enjoy the weather in the summer. And thanks again for hanging. I really appreciate it, hanging out with us. So now we can see we have this color here, right? This frequency. But the intensity grows. So I can just kind of do a scumbling where I just kind of kiss the surface. Oh, that would be great. Another video. That would be fantastic. Oh, I'd love to see that. And now I'm going to come back and maybe we can kind of show this intensity progressing. Intensity and energy are different. Alright, so Art Bite say, just wanted to stop in and say hi and appreciate your airbrush videos. They have helped me a lot over the years, last year and a half. Thanks. I appreciate that, Ty. And I'll be doing more airbrush. You know, I'm going to be doing oil paints and airbrushing. So I see a new airbrush painting coming pretty soon. So stay tuned, Ty. And always thanks for hanging out. I appreciate you. And that is so cool. Thank you so much for your support, my friend. And I will continue doing it. If it helps great people like yourself, I definitely want to continue doing these videos. Now this is pretty light here, and I may come in and do a glaze later with a yellow here. And now I'm just going to get this here, this little fan brush. We'll kind of work this out there like that. Now what I want to do is I want to have this light dissipate, and that's another thing about photonic realism. It talks about wavelength dissipation, and so things don't just go from powerful light to dark, you know. They dissipate just like any energy. A tea kettle doesn't go from hot to cold. It takes time. Same thing with color, you know, on a face. It doesn't just change, it eases in. Now we do have a little bit of raising the volume here, right here. See if I could. It's not just a flat plane, there's energy spikes because there's parts of her orbicularosaurus that are facing the light more directly, so it's going to have little ebbs and flow of intensity. And I'll smooth this out. But notice, like, we'll go in and see, you know, we could, oh man, Mr. Gregory, have a great night. We got to talk. And I want to hear all about it, sir. And I'm just saying I'm so excited. And, you know, it really made my month, so thank you, and that is so great. And don't worry about the studio, it's going to be great in a couple of years anyway, so you give that idea, that studio time to germinate, just like photonic realism, right, sir? So I'll talk to you soon, Mr. Dave. Thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate you a lot, my friend. Oh, we're going to zoom in. Notice the ebb and flow of light intensity here. And I think this is where that realism. So we're not copying the photo. We're using the photo as reference to depict the nature of light. And that's the other thing about photonic realism. It doesn't really matter, you know, whoever resonates with it is going to appreciate it and adopt its precepts. So everything's about resonance, right? So that's a little powerful, right? That little light, I like it, but it's not the wavelength. So it's too much intensity. So I got to calm that down. It's super exciting, you know, someone like me who has been painting since he was 14 years old, painting in oil since he was 14, and then to see to have a new way of seeing that is right is really exciting. And now I can blend that together. And you see how what was once just a flat piece of, and that would have been fine if I would have left this flat. But by painting the ebb and flow of the energy, it immediately, which is really interesting, it gives us that three-dimensional quality on its own. It's like I always say, and people kind of look at me funny, if you want to paint a likeness, don't try and make it look like them. And thanks, guys, for coming to see me, like Mr. Kyle and Roy and another person online, and Colette and Patty and Gary and Dave. Really appreciate you all. Liz, it's so great to see you. And Rick, thanks for being here. I hope I got everyone. Those who are hanging out in the background, I'm so glad you're here. Those who are seeing this, you know, thank you so much. But you see how when I paid attention, how it was too light before? It's so important to catch the to have resonance with the frequency. And by doing that, it was only then that I was able to see and get the realism. When I was out of resonance with the frequency, I wasn't able to see it. And that caused me to actually miss the realism and miss her likeness. Now, it's becoming much more realistic. Thanks, Kyle. Kyle says good to be here. I appreciate that so much, sir. So very much. I look at my live stream as, you know, hanging out with good friends. And to me, that's more than enough. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this dry, and then what we were doing with the transparents, I can up the energy by adding the red to it, right? So I can change the energy of the intensity, and vice versa. I could raise the intensity of the energy. And that's why with Photonic Realism it pays to, you know the frequencies of the different colors in the visible spectrum, because then you'll be able to see that, okay, this color has more energy than that color, and this color has a higher frequency than that color. And people might say, well, that's like really information you don't need. But when you are in resonance with the energy and then all of a sudden you look at the results of what's happening. It's pretty exciting. Oh, that's great question. Is this for commission? No, this is basically just a photonic realism demonstration for you all. And so this is, this is not a commission, but if anyone wanted to buy it, it would be available. As always. So right here, I'm just gonna kind of raise the energy, right? We're not changing the intensity, we're just raising the energy level. And that looks terrible. And sometimes you'll put something down and be like, that looks terrible. And that's where I am now. I can take one of these foamies that I use for pastel. So I'm versed in pastel. I can paint in pastel as well as I paint in oil, and I can paint in airbrush as well as I paint in oil and pastel, which is really great because it gives me different insights of the other mediums. I can use some of the advantages of how airbrush artists look at paintings and stuff. Oh, Kyle says, do I have... Yes, there is a website. There's a couple. One is www.inkflingers.com. That's more of my airbrush stuff and the airbrush that I sell and stuff like that, and some of my classes. And then I have www.paintedglyphs.com, 2 websites that I have. And pretty soon I'm going to have photonicrealism.com. And thanks for asking, sir. Now right here, you see how it's lighter on this side of her philtrum? Now if it's lighter, then that's different, right? That's raising the intensity, right? It's not changing the frequency necessarily. It could change the frequency as well, but mainly what that is doing is changing the intensity. So I want to get a paintbrush and a clean paintbrush. So what I'm going to do is either do that or clean one of my airbrushes, one of my paintbrushes. So here, this one isn't dirty, so I can come in with something that has more energy. Not more energy, more intensity. And this is quite dark, but still much more intensity than what was there. Let's see if this works. See how I'm raising the intensity of the light? Now I got to make sure that I'm in resonance with it, that I'm not painting what the light waves or photons are telling me. I'm not putting my own stuff in there. So I'm raising that energy level. Not the energy, I keep saying that, but the intensity. There's a little bit more light here. Now when we look at this, we can say, yeah, okay, we did get the intensity level, however, we are not correct with the energy because it's a little warmer here. So I can come back in and add that warmth, which is the energy or the frequency. So right now we're looking at this, and I'm not 100% happy with it. So that means I could either wait for it to dry, and then I could come in with, Brad says, looking great, Tim, gotta go. Have a good night all. Take care, Mr. Brad. Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate you. Good to see you, as always. sometimes you can exaggerate the intensity because you want to come back and do a glaze, and that's okay. But like that, that's a little too powerful, right? But maybe it isn't. But I can tap this, kind of bring that back. So most artists will tell you that you paint value and saturation and hue. But it's much deeper than that, my friends. It really is. And with Photonic Realism, it really teaches you, what that difference is. Now right here, remember we glazed it, so I'm not going to touch that glaze. But what I can do is later I can put a new glaze here. So that's what I'll do. I'll leave it like that and then just make a mental note that I'm going to change the glaze. Now right here, I'm going to increase the intensity because you see this mentalis right here in the mental fat compartment just underneath the orbicularis oris is getting some direct light from that candle. Almost a reflective light from the candle. Not reflected light, but the light reflecting off of her chin here, or the the mental fat compartment on top of the mentalis. We'll just bring that up so you can see what I'm doing here. See this little bit of energy here. And, sometimes we exaggerate it, but we want to be in resonance to what we're seeing, So I can use this as a kind of blender. So this is my experience in pastels. I can do things in oils that pastel artists do. Kind of blend that out there. And as I zoom out, we can see that she's starting to feel like she's actually in that room with that candle. Now over here, I think we can do a glaze of some of that orange over here because I think it's a little bit, the wavelength's off. It has a little higher frequency than we need, right? So we're going to go ahead and perhaps glaze some orange right in this area here. Here's this orange color. Just kind of go for a little longer wavelength here. And here, maybe we could kind of come in with a little more orange. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Maybe here we could kind of bring this over. Here we definitely can do some longer wavelengths over here. See how longer wavelengths with less frequency, a lower frequency. So people might ask, well, what is frequency? So think of a wave, right? And a wave that goes up and down really fast, that has a higher frequency. And a wave that is longer and doesn't go up and down as fast, that has a lower frequency. So more energy means a higher frequency. And I'm just enjoying the process, so I'm not worried. So we may look at this, right, and say, okay, Tim, I see you did some glazes and it's not as smooth. Well, that's where the next step comes, is when we glaze over this with a transparent white. And what that transparent white is going to do, it's going to actually smooth things out and unify things. And that would be very similar in Airbrush when you kind of go over it with a lighter color and it kind of softens everything. So it's very similar to that. Now right here along the lips here, it's much lighter. So I'm going to come in and kind of bring some more energy there. Sorry, not energy, intensity. So I got to get my own vernacular correct. So this area is actually facing the light more, and by doing so, it's going to have more intensity. So I'm adding that intensity. I'm not changing the wavelength, you know, I'm just adding intensity. And this is more of an opaque color. And I'm not worried so much about, you know, how it comes out. I'm more worried about seeing things in this new way. And now we can definitely see now how there's more energy in her mouth there. More intensity. Keep getting that off. So I'll get it down. We'll bring some of that intensity over here where it's really hitting this area on her nose more intently. So I hope you all seen it, you know, seen the live stream, and I hope it is instilling you a new way of looking, right? And that's all we really need, you know, is to see the world differently and truthfully, right? This isn't, you know, my own way of doing it. This is a way of seeing light for what it is, and understanding that what we are painting is actually painting the nature of light and how it interacts with matter and form. And thank you, Colette, and I appreciate you, Colette, for coming by. Thank you, Patty, everyone. It's just so great to talk with you, and I hope to see you soon. So that's it. That's basically, where we are in this photonic portrait. But hopefully that I explained that, that we're not painting just her, but we're painting her as her form reacts to the light, and how that dynamic reaction is so important. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out. I really appreciate everyone. I may do another live stream. I'm going to work on this on my own. So if I'm not done on my own by next week, I'll have a new painting. But thank you so much for hanging out, everyone. And continue seeing the world in a different way. And exploring, and are we seeing it for what we're seeing? Are we on the same wavelength and all that? Kyle, take care, my friend. Everyone, thanks for hanging out. I hope you have a great week. You all are very important to me. Another person online, thanks for hanging. Good luck with that painting. And take care, everyone. Have a great weekend.